Alright guys, well I'm back today with a really cool 9mm handgun, the Star Model Super B. This one fits into a wide variety of categories, including that high value and budget handgun that I always like to look at and review on the channel, as well as a more collectible handgun, a surplus handgun, and a range use, competition use style handgun. It looks oddly familiar to a 1911 and it's got some of the same design cues, features, and performance. We'll talk a little bit more about that in the performance section of this review. Right off the bat, I want to give a huge shout out to Beltway Gun & Pawn, located in Matthews, North Carolina, for helping me out with this review. These guys always give me a store credit towards guns I'm going to review once a month, so this was the one I picked for August. I've always wanted to try out something very similar to this Star Model B, and when I saw the Star Model Super B, that slightly longer version, more of that competition style version, I knew I had to try one. So let's talk about the specs, features, performance down at the range, and just a touch about the history of the Star Model Super B. You may be a little bit more familiar with the Star Model B because those are more common and you see those a lot more. They hover around that $250 to $300 price point. And then the Star Model Super Bs came in a little bit more. Now, I don't believe these are imported any longer, and I could be wrong. You may find somebody depending on when you're watching this. That's why I like Beltway Gun & Pawn, because they're always getting some really cool stuff and you're paying fair prices. Also, if you show up to Beltway Gun & Pawn and you tell them 704 Tactical sent you over, you'll save 10% off of anything in your store. And if for some reason it's not quite working out right, ask to talk to one of the managers and they'll know exactly what I'm talking about and they'll get you hooked up with that 10% off. Now, I really got this handgun not necessarily for the collectability of it, but more because I wanted a 9mm style 1911 that didn't break the bank, and I wanted to see how this could compete with one down at the range. This is a 9-round magazine, and you can find these magazines on Gunbroker for right around $30 to $35, and they pretty similar to a standard 1911 9mm magazine, although they are not interchangeable at all. The grips themselves are mediocre, a more brown plasticky grip. But where this starts to really shine is the user interface with the handgun. In fact, I love the safety and overall feel of this handgun a lot. It feels very similar to a 1911 with the beaver tail and that more 1911 hammer and sights, but it just feels nice, especially with this swell at the bottom. It just kind of guides your hand into the handgun. The beaver tail, though, leaves a little bit to be desired, and while you're shooting this handgun, especially in a competition-style scenario, drawing from a holster, you can get a little meat of your hand over the beaver tail and get a little bit of hammer bite. Now, it happens occasionally, and it's not that big of a deal, but it is something to consider. This does have a magazine disconnect, and I'll make sure it's clear one more time, but you cannot fire it with the magazine out of the handgun. Only when you insert the magazine in can you fire the handgun. Now, the safety itself is incredibly nice, and I've already mentioned it, but it's got some nice texturing on the top and almost like a cup or a scoop on the top, allowing you to easily flip it off, especially when you're drawing, and ride your hand over the top of that safety and really engage your target, bear down on the gun, and control those shots. The sights are fairly rudimentary, and they're halfway decent. Somebody painted these, but you can make out a decent sight picture. I'll probably repaint that front one like green, orange, or red just to help me acquire the target a little bit better. There's some nice texturing on the side release, although for me, I personally have to break my grip to knock that down, and that is something to consider for competition speed reloads. The mag release works good, and again, I have to slightly break my grip to reach that. And I believe this magazine is a lot longer than it needs to be because I think it was originally designed for that 9mm Largo cartridge. So when the 9mm goes in there, it's got a little bit of a gap to span before it gets into the chamber. But that kind of leads me to function and reliability. There are no function and reliability issues that I've seen with this handgun. I've tried it with brass-cased ammunition and steel-cased ammunition, as well as a few hollow points, and I ran to 0 issues. Again, leading it to a good, reliable handgun for range use and competition use. Now, being the fact that they're surplus handguns or older style handguns, you will have to be concerned with worn out springs on some beat up models, but a lot of times you can run over these and check over these, and most of them still are in great condition. I believe you can find some aftermarket grips, although they're not very prevalent, but I think it is possible. Overall, guys, the shooting experience of this handgun was really pleasant. In fact, it was one of the smoothest shooting 9mm I've shot in a long time. I could easily acquire targets, rattle off shots, and transition from target to target with ease. It pointed very naturally like a 1911, and I could easily engage my targets from the draw with just a point-shoot method up close, and that is very handy, especially in those competition-style modes. Now, I took it out to about 15 yards and shot some groups with it, and was very pleasantly surprised at the accuracy of such a high-value and budget handgun. Everything worked as it should, it shot great, and the recoil impulse is very minimal. It's a large steel frame gun, so that sucks up a lot of the weight, and that 9mm cartridge, even some of that more stout brass case 9mm, did fine with this gun when it comes to recoil impulse. That definitely aids in follow-up shots for competition or personal defense if you decide you wanted to use something like this. In summary, guys, I can absolutely recommend the Star Model Super B, and in comparison to a 1911 9mm, I think if you're kind of on a budget, you don't want to spend much more than about $400 to $450, this is a great option if you can find it for that price. Again, Beltway Gun & Pawn had it for a steal of a deal, and I'm really glad I snagged it because I absolutely love it. And if you're not worried about interchanging parts and getting the latest and greatest 9mm 1911, something like this is perfect and great for basic competition and range use, given its limited capacity and overall feel and performance of a basic 9mm 1911. Mags may be a little bit harder to find than your standard 9mm 1911, grips and accessories like I said earlier, but overall this is a pretty cool option. I would definitely check it out. And again, if you head by Beltway Gun & Pawn, tell them 704 Tactical sent you over for 10% off. Thanks for watching, guys. Have a good one.